Today's featured author is Ted Myers. He is the author of Paris Escapades, or that's what we're going to be talking about today anyway. So don't go away. We'll be right back with his story. If you're just joining us, welcome to Books with Brigetti, a Q&A with our author of today, who is Ted Myers, and we're going to be talking about his latest book called Paris Escapades. If you don't know me, I'm your host, Brigetti Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa, and this stream is made possible by StreamYard and Be Live Media. A special warm welcome if you're joining us on Amazon. Please remember to unmute and also to follow so that you know when we are going live the next time. If you're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn, also a very hearty special welcome to you. If you do want to have the opportunity to buy the book because it's in the carousel on Amazon Live, then do come over and join us on Amazon Live, but you're welcome to watch us. So warm welcome if you're watching us on Amazon Live. Do remember to unmute. This is an audience-centric show and we are monitoring the comments. I am watching the comments, and so please feel free to say hello, tell me where you're watching from. If you've got any questions for our author for today, please pop them in the comments as well. And again, our author for today is Ted Myers, and we are talking about his book, Paris Escapades. If you're over on Amazon, you can see that I've put the book Paris Escapades in the carousel for you. So Ted Myers is a multifaceted, amazing person. He has got so many stories, and whenever I've interviewed him, it's always hard to sort of try and contain things down to 30 minutes or so, because we could talk for hours. And so he tells me that after 20 years of trembling on the brink of rock stardom and 15 years of working at record companies, he left the music business. Maybe we should ask him why today. I don't think I've actually asked him why. Maybe we should ask him that question. Anyway, he took on a job as a copywriter with an advertising agency, and this cemented his determination to become an author, and a very good one he is at that. He's appeared in many literary magazines, anthologies, and his amusing memoir, Making It, Music, Sex and Drugs in the Golden Age of Rock, was published in 2017. Go look that up. Fluffy's Revolution, published by Black Rose Writing in 2019, was his very first novel. And again, today we are talking about Paris Escapade, and over on Amazon. Remember to unmute. Then that was released on December 17, 2020. And so that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. And so I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's just welcome Ted to the show, shall we? Ted Myers, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to see you again, Brigetti.
I'm so happy that we've had the opportunity to chat again. And I want to say hello to all the people over there on Amazon Live and just remind them to unmute so they can hear us speak. Ted, I don't think I've asked you this before, but you were doing well in the music industry. Did you get tired of it? Why did you leave? What was the story behind that?
Well, I think if you read the original copy of my author bio, it said after 15 years in the music industry, he left the music business, or perhaps it was the other way around. And, at that time, about 2010, I think it was, the music industry was changing. The record companies were downsizing. Anyway, my job ceased to exist one day. I was doing mainly editorial work,
and that's way before the pandemic.
Way before, years before. But it was right during and after the worst of the Great Recession that started in 2008, and it was a delayed reaction. I thought I had dodged the bullet, but it didn't work that way. It came late for us, and I was tired of. I mean, at my age, at that point, I was already well over 50 years old, and the music business is really a young person's world, and a lot of the new music wasn't all that much to my liking. So it was fine all the way around. I started to take my editorial experience more seriously, and didn't take me very long to get a job at an advertising agency, and that was novel and it was fun, and I got to write ad copy and slogans, and some of it was kind of silly, but some of it was good, and I had a good time doing it for the time that I did it. But then I decided I liked writing, and I wanted to write what I wanted to write, not what someone else
wanted to. I want to ask you, I am a firm believer that no experience is wasted. And so how did your experience in the music industry contribute to you, making you a better author?
Well, the first book that I wrote was a memoir about my years as a rock and roller, and Mark Twain said,
"That's Fluffy's Revolution," right?
No, my first book was
the very first one. Okay, got it.
That's making it music, sex, and drugs.
Got it.
And so I wrote a rather outrageous and irreverent memoir about my adventures in the music business and all the famous people that I crossed paths with, and that sort of got my feet wet in as far as becoming a writer. I also took some classes which were very helpful. I attended night classes at UCLA Extension, and had a couple of very good teachers, one in particular, and also seeing the work of the other students, comparing notes, as it were, with the other people in class. These were in-person classes, and that I found that very helpful. And
I believe I've spoken to a couple of authors who said, even if you think you are a good writer, it's good to go to some kind of formal training, because it teaches you how to develop the critical skill of good storytelling, compelling storytelling. Because I think,
Right.
As an author, what you want is to be able to produce a book that people can't put down. In other words, you want to put out the kind of book that people would stay up all night for, and like, I can't go to bed, I have to finish reading this. So, learning that skill to write down compelling words that will keep people hanging on by their fingertips is a skill.
Exactly. And that's really what I learned taking the classes. I've always had a way with words, and I always enjoyed writing and taking English classes in school and so on. But this took me to another level, and now I read a lot, and reading really teaches me a lot about writing. I read different authors and how good they are, and I think, oh my God, I could never be that good. And it spurs me on to greater heights.
Well, I think, I don't think one ever reaches the point, whatever your career, where you kind of think, there's nothing I can learn any longer. We can always get better at our craft, whatever that may be.
Absolutely. I
I,
agree.
I, I, I mean, as humans, we never want to stop learning, right? That learning process kind of continues until you have your last breath. I think life would be very boring if we decided to stop learning or not doing anything anymore.
Yes, and I think, and the old adage, youth is wasted on the young. Education is wasted on the young. I enjoyed it way much more when I became an adult and took these classes at UCLA. I was having the time of my life, and it wasn't like going to school as a kid, where I gotta go to school.
It's a weird thing, that, Ted, isn't it? I mean, I think of it, I agree with you that, education's waste on the youth in one sense, because we kind of see it as something that we have to do, and we do it begrudgingly. And also back in the day, the teachers were not as innovative as they are today. You literally had, or I had teachers who weren't really teaching. All they were doing is regurgitating stuff that was in the textbook. They used to stand in the front of the class with a textbook and read stuff out of the textbook. And I mean, I could do that stuff at home, you know. So they didn't add too much value. And in fact, there was a teacher that I learned, and he was a part of this paradigm shift of doing flipped learning. And he was saying that, he is totally against this whole idea of teachers regurgitating what's in the textbook, because the kids can do that by themselves at home. They need to come to the class with questions. In other words, what he wanted to do was create a hunger in them for learning more and learning different things, and coming to the class with questions, not, to put the textbook away. So that was kind of his thing.
What a concept. Yeah, exactly. And the teacher that taught me the most was in my memoir class, and she herself had written a memoir or two, and she was just an amazing person, and so funny, and so irreverent and informal. It was really a pleasure to go to her classes, and the banter that went back and forth.
Yeah. Well, no, and teachers make such an impact on us, whether they were teachers at school or teachers at university or wherever. They have an amazing impact for the good or the bad, and we remember them for certain things throughout our lives. I have teachers that has impacted my life, some for the good and some not so good. That's made me not like certain things in life because of that foundation that I had with them. you know so yeah, so tell us a little bit about Paris Escapades.
Escapade. Yeah, you've got it as escapades.
Oh, sorry, we need to fix that.
On the crawl. It doesn't matter. It's Paris Escapade, and it really starts out as a bit of memoir, because when I was 16, I went on a trip to Europe with a bunch of kids, and we toured 7 countries in 6 weeks in a bus. And our hosts, our counselors, if you will, were Dutch. We started in Amsterdam, and we went all
How
through Europe.
thrilling.
It was the thrill of my life up to that point. It was the greatest summer of my life. And so I started writing more or less about that. But I made the boy, it's a first person narrative by this 17-year-old boy. I made him 17 because some of the stuff he gets into is a little more credible for a 17-year-old than it would have been for me at 16. In any case, that was my jumping off point, So we start out with this tour with this bunch of kids. Only our hero, whose name is Eddie Strull, decides to make a break for it. He sneaks out of the youth hostel in Paris which is the last stop on the trip, and disappears into the labyrinth of the left bank, and gets involved with all sorts of bohemian and questionable characters, including a beautiful 19-year-old girl who's a prostitute. And so I take him on this whirlwind adventure through not only Paris, but all across Europe. And he's sought by criminals and the cops. And it's, of course, his parents are frantic. They've got the police looking for him. And he's trying to be a writer. And so he meets a lot of interesting people along the way, including some real people who I sprinkled my fiction with real people that were in Paris at that time, like Maurice Giraudias, who was the owner and publisher of the Olympia Press, which was very famous in the 50s for publishing risque material that no one in the United States or the UK would publish. He was the first publisher of the book Lolita, of William Burroughs' Naked Lunch, the story of a whole bunch of rather racy fiction by writers that turned out to be immortals,
Wow.
And I have Giraudias being a benefactor to this kid in my book. I've also incorporated people like Dexter Gordon, the famous saxophone player who was an American expatriate, and I had Dexter's quartet playing at a party, a couple of parties that I attended, and there was some repartee with him, all of which is fictional, but he himself was a real person, and there's a movie about him called, I think it's called Round Midnight. Anyway, it's a great movie, and it stars the real Dexter Gordon. And there were a few others, some of the beat poets and a concert pianist and people that you probably never heard of. But I decided to use real people with names that were real. If you Google them, you can find them.
Do you ever tell them, like when you write about real people, do you tell them you did, or do you just kind of leave it?
I made sure they were all dead.
That sounds terrible, Ted. That sounds very terrible.
I feel dead people are fair game.
They can't come back and hound you about what
That's
you've
right.
written.
That's right. I mean, they were all adults, well into their middle age by the time in 1963. This book takes place in 1963. I guess I didn't really make that clear, but so it was a very different world, and of course, those people have already come and gone. But I had fun playing around with using real people. And there's a lot of high adventure in it, and there's a crime element to it. Um, there's a serial murderer on the loose, and
There's lots of twists and turns in the book.
lots of twists and turns. It goes at quite a frantic pace. I have to learn to slow down a little bit, I think, in my writing style, because my books are all very fast-paced. I'm impatient. I'm an impatient person, so I'm impatient to move on with this. I don't want to bore anybody for a second. I want it to keep moving, and a new surprise every couple of pages, and yes, there's a surprise ending. Which I won't talk about because
We don't give it away.
I don't want to create any spoilers. But it's I think it's a really exciting book. This is the best one I've written, I believe. Of course, any writer that you speak with will always say his latest work is his best. I like Fluffy's Revolution too. It was sort of disguised as a children's book, but it's not.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of the children's movies that they make. It's disguised as children's movies, but really children
like
don't
Shrek,
get the humor in there. Yeah, it's all adult stuff, really.
Yeah, that's to get the parents into the theater. Um, this was a little different. I mean, the cover makes it look like a children's book about a cat, and it stars a cat, Fluffy's Revolution. But that's another book for another time. We'll talk. We already talked about that in another interview. That's more in the science fiction genre. I don't stick with one genre. I keep jumping around.
How do you find jumping around between genres? Do you find it quite easy to flip through them?
I find it boring to stay in one, and for me, I mean, there are an awful lot of writers that hit on a groove and write series, book after book with the same characters, the same private eye, or the same, protagonist, whoever it may be, doing different adventures. I am not one of those people. I'm not a series writer. However, with Fluffy's Revolution, I got a lot of response from the public saying, they would love to see more. They love animals. People love animals, and
They do.
These animals they're talking animals. They're talking, but it's credible because they speak telepathically. So they wanted to see more Fluffy, and so I am now working on a sequel to Fluffy's Revolution.
Aha.
I never wanted to fall into that series niche, but I am doing this one more book about Fluffy and her crew because people loved it so much.
Do you have Paris Escapade close by, or is it way in your bookshelf?
Yeah.
Can I ask you to read a favorite section out of the book?
Yes. Surprise. You surprised me. You didn't do that before, but I'm going to I even bookmarked the section.
Mm.
I'm going to read probably the most tense moment of the book, where Eddie is traveling with his girlfriend, this 19-year-old prostitute, who also turns out to be a drug addict and is trafficking in heroin. And her manager / madam sends her to Marseille to score, like a kilo or two of heroin from these Corsican gangsters that they had a relationship with. So she goes there, and they get robbed and tied up and thrown into a closet. And I'll take it from here. Hey, Matisse yelled, "What do you think you're doing?" "We are robbing you, mademoiselle," the fat man said casually. "Who the hell are you, anyway? Where's Lebay? We have an arrangement." "Lebay is dead. We have taken over his operation. I am Mariani. When Madame Lebreau finds out about this, she'll have your head. We came to buy, not be robbed." With a slight gesture of his head, Mariani had his thugs tie our hands behind our backs and gag us with filthy rags. They threw us into a large closet with a dusty, splintery floor and locked us in. A bare light bulb glared at us from the ceiling. The space was empty except for us. We could hear them talking in Mariani's office just outside the door. They were debating what to do with us. I didn't catch all of the Corsican slang, but the gist of it seemed to me, was that they had to make us disappear. There was only one way to interpret that, and I was scared shitless. "We will need a boat," said Mariani. "Where is Manazou?" "At sea, fishing," answered the thug who had let us in. "Well, when will we be back? We need to dispose of the bodies at sea." "Tomorrow, day after the latest." Martise and I looked at each other wide-eyed as we slid down to the floor with our backs against the wall. After a while, I closed my eyes and tried to get some rest. Sleep was out of the question, but my body needed rest. I don't know how much time went by. I must have dozed off because I was awakened by desperate noises from Martise. I looked over and saw her sweating profusely and shivering. Her skin was a ghastly shade of white. She was uttering imploring sounds through her gag. Gradually, I realized she was going through withdrawals. She was in agony. I wanted desperately to help her, but what could I do? I started working on the ropes behind my back. If I kept tugging, I was sure I could eventually wriggle my hands free. Just then, I heard a key turn in the lock. The big lug who had greeted us at the door entered with a tray of food. He untied our hands and gags to let us eat the bread, cheese, and tea. No utensils were provided. As soon as her gag was off, Martise told him in a frenzied stream of words I barely understood, that she was jonesing, and she had to get her shot, and he had to get her a shot, or she would die. His response was the equivalent of tough shit. He got up and left us there with our food. Anyway, I could go on, but I won't. So
that is, you had me
spot.
captivated. You had me captivated.
And he calls on his juvenile delinquent past to take one of her hairpins and pick the lock to escape from the closet. But I can say no more.
Yeah, I think not, because it's going to give away some important parts of it. But that was amazing. I mean, I sat there hanging on to your every word. So
Thank you. I'm not exactly a literary titan, but I like to spin a yarn.
so who's your, when it comes to being an author, who's your biggest critic?
What person is my biggest critic?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I have a little cadre of friends to whom I send um, my manuscript before it's edited and before the publisher sees it. And I get feedback from various people that they're my beta group, you know, uh, beta readers, and they're all pretty friendly. I mean, uh, I got some negative criticism from one of them, and she was right on. She, you know, I really took it to heart. Another person made a really good suggestion about something that I should reference earlier in the book, so the reader would know what I was talking about when I got to it later in the book, and that worked really well. So I got some really good suggestions from my good friends who are avid readers, and I am grateful to them and I acknowledge them at the beginning of the book.
I think it's great to have a good selection of people that you trust, so that when they throw something back at you, you know it comes from a good place.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, they're totally sympathetic, mostly complimentary, and I'm really not fishing for compliments. I'm fishing for improvements. So I encourage criticism, and I want people to be honest with me about how it strikes them. I did this for an author friend of mine. He sent me his manuscript. Well, first he sent me a finished book, and I didn't think it was that great. I told him, you know, it wasn't really my cup of tea, and it didn't suspend my disbelief sufficiently. It was science fiction, and he said, "Well, the next one, the one we're working on now, is better." He writes with his wife, and so I said, "Well, maybe you could send me the manuscript before you send it to the publisher, because by the time it's published,
You
any
can't do anything.
my input's useless. You know, it's a done deal." So he did. He sent me the manuscript, and I really dug into it, and I gave him a very thorough edit and proofread, um, and it really improved the book. And he was grateful. You know, that kind of thing would have cost me $2,000 if I wanted to do it. If I wanted to get someone else to do it. But because
Wow.
I liked the book. I mean, the thing he sent me, the idea was great, but you know, it had flaws that I could see, and so I fixed it for him.
You're a nice man. What can we say?
Well, I'm proud of the work I did on that. Editing is a skill unto itself, and I um, have dabbled in it quite a bit through my life. But you can't edit yourself. No, no one
No,
can.
you can't. What does it feel like now? You know, I think when you write your first book and somebody goes and edits it and shreds it to pieces, I think it's a little bit heart wrenching. It's like, what did you do? I think the first time round it's hard to appreciate an editor.
I didn't have that experience. My first book, which was the memoir, was published by a different publisher, and I developed a relationship with one of two guys that ran the company. Um, he was he's British, and he's an English teacher, and he offered to edit the book for me. So I said, "Great, you know, have at it." And I thought he did a wonderful job. I mean, he made a lot of improvements in the book, and I'm completely open to changing things. But when if they suggest something that I'm not up for, I'll simply say, No, I don't agree with that. We're going to leave that as it was." You know, and I'm very firm in that respect. But for the most part, the changes he made were great.
I
So
think, you know, if you kind of, I mean, if you know what you're doing, you know your storyline, you know the characters, and you know where you want to go with it, and so you know I think if you can look at the feedback that you get critically, then you're going to have the best outcome.
Yeah. Well, one thing I remember from his feedback was, you can't say fat chick.
Okie dokie.
And I never said that again.
You never said that again. It's funny how it's little things like that that could make a huge difference. You know, you could have offended a lot of readers, for example, and not even intentionally so. But
Yeah, of course.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I was talking like I used to talk in the 1960s, you know, when we didn't have the same sort of
Consciousness or awareness.
political correctness, whatever you want to call it, social correctness. Anyway, uh, that worked out well. So I was quite open to editing after that. But then I found that normally the editing services are very expensive. You know, he was the publisher and he didn't charge me a dime. But if you want to hire an editor and a proofreader, they're usually two different people. It's very expensive. So
It
I had
is,
to fend for myself for the most part.
What did it feel like to you when you realized that writing is not a get rich quick scheme?
Say that again.
When did it dawn on you that writing is not a get rich quick scheme? You know, a lot of people sort of think, well, if I become an author, I can sit back and all the dollars will just roll in.
I went through that with music. I thought I was going to become a rock and roll star and be rich. I never deluded myself that writing was going to be a get rich quick scheme, quick or otherwise. I was writing for the pure pleasure it gave me, and for my own amusement, and for the amusement of the few people that were going to read it. And I was very realistic about the whole thing. Amazon publishes millions of books a year, offers for sale, I should say. And the chances of anyone really noticing yours and having it stand out in the crowd just on its own merits are so slight. If you're with a major publisher, it's a different story. They spend money marketing you, but most small publishers don't do that. And if they do, you share in the marketing costs.
Yeah. So what has your marketing journey been like, Ted? I mean, how do you market, and what advice would you give to a new author with regards to marketing?
Well, first of all, get as many free book reviews as you can by contacting book bloggers and flattering them that you love their blog, and asking them humbly to read your book and give a critique. And most of them will agree. So they're amateurs, they're not inaccessible. So that's one free way you can promote your book, by getting a lot of reviews. You want to get those reviews on Amazon whenever possible, and Goodreads. All those things don't cost you any money. Then there are things that do cost you money. And on my first novel, Fluffy's Revolution, I shelled out quite a bit of money to do cooperative marketing with the publisher. The publisher offered me certain opportunities that they were going to share in the cost of. And we did, I can't remember, we did Facebook ads, and we did other, what was the other? We did Amazon ads and Facebook ads. And, I'm not sure that it helped. I'm not sure that it really boosted sales. It's impossible to calibrate these things. but the publisher seemed to have a way of calibrating it, and he kept saying, "Well, let's keep this up a little while longer. We're almost to the break-even point," that sort of thing.
Well, it's their job to do that, right?
Yeah, and I was glad to have that engagement with the publisher. With Paris Escapade, I've done very little in the way of promotion. I haven't spent money on it in the same way that I did with Fluffy's Revolution. Fluffy was a niche book, science fiction. It was about telepathic animals who had other powers as well. They had the power of telekinesis as well. And so it fit neatly into a sci-fi niche as well as an animal lover's niche. And so I knew the target audience exactly that I was going after. With Paris Escapade,
it was fair game.
Yeah,
fair game.
Anybody that likes that era and a European adventure, would probably like it.
So do you when you decide on a book, do you decide on the audience and work back, or do you kind of just figure that along the way?
I don't think about the audience at all. I mean, when it's done, when I've completed it, or when I at least get to the point where the end is in sight, I'll start to think about who the targeted audience might be, because I need to tell the publisher that information. But no, I don't think about it. I don't do it to target an audience. I do.
How long did it take you to write Paris Escapade?
It seems to me this went very quickly. It was, Fluffy was published in 2019, and Paris was published in 2020. So it was all done within a year. It was less than a year. It was probably 6 or 8 months, maybe.
That's pretty quick. That's, some people take years and years and years to get a book out.
Yeah, well, that's what the sequel to Fluffy is taking. I don't know. It's the pace has become much slower for me these days. Maybe because of my age, I don't know, but it'll get done. It'll get done when it gets done.
But you're writing for the joy of it. I think it's very different when you much younger and you have a lot more pressure on you, time pressure to make money. It's slightly different. Whereas I think you're writing more for the joy of writing now, right?
I didn't start writing until I was of retirement age. I didn't start trying to get published. I wrote a lot of short stories, some of which were published in literary magazines and anthologies, but I didn't start writing full-length fiction until I was safely retired. And
do you still write short stories in between, or have you shelved that now?
I haven't written one in a while, but I certainly haven't ruled it out.
So it could still happen.
I've still got quite a stockpile of short stories that I try to hawk to different places from time to time. If I see an opportunity come up that fits fits one of my stories, I'll send it out. And every once in a while I get one published, and most of the time I get rejected. But that's part of the game. You have to get used to it.
Do you have a sort of...
It doesn't mean that much to me. It doesn't affect me emotionally anymore. Rejection. I'm used to it. I expect it.
It's life, right? I mean, I know that I used to tell my sons growing up, that failure is just par for the course, and get used to it. It's what happens in life. It's the fact that you pick yourself up from that fall or failure is what matters more than the fact that you actually fell.
It's just a matter of a person's taste. You're sending something out to maybe one person that's going to read it, and it's either to their taste or it's not. And I completely understand that. I can't expect everybody to like what I like and immediately glom onto my thing. So yeah, it doesn't affect me one way or another.
Ted, thank you so much. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing Paris Escapade with us. Um, this was fun, and I hope that those that are watching us on Amazon Live and on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube have had as much fun as I have had chatting to you today.
Me
And
too.
yeah, so thank you so much. It was great having you on the show. And as always, I would love to have you back again sometime. And next time we can talk about one of your other great works of art. Ted, thank you so
Can't
much.
wait.
Stay well. Stay safe.
You too. Thank you, Brigetti.
Take care, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. From me, Brigetti, in Cape Town, South Africa, it's going to be goodbye for now.